if we send staff during the day, as well as paying for transportation for our teams out to Mechanicsburg and providing them with a meal during the day as well. So we're going to look into that as we move forward. But for me personally, it was about the most realistic training that you can provide in a school environment. And speaking to some of the other schools that have already been there, there's been nothing but positive feedback. And it's situationally based, so whatever your response is, the next scenario you see is going to react to what you're doing. So very realistic for us to be engaged in that. So we're talking about our administrative teams, our front end staff, obviously our safety and security teams would be involved in that as well. We had a number of our officers complete an online de-escalation training that was offered by the Department of Justice. That was just this past week. Very responsive to that. Provided us with a lot of tools that we can be using on a daily basis when it comes to circumstances that we've been encountering. Thankfully, they've all been resolved without any kind of escalation, and we've been working very well with the teams we already have in place in our buildings, PSBAs, counselors, and social workers especially. So we're very appreciative of that opportunity. As I mentioned, the AED distribution continues throughout the district. We had a conversation last month when we met, and it's been brought up several times in the past about a crosswalk somewhere in the area of the front of the high school, crossing over to Vincent's Pizza, the county trail, somewhere along that line. So I did some investigating this month along with our township. They deferred right away to PennDOT because we're crossing a state highway. But one of the things that was mentioned is we are in a more suitable position because there's a chance for us to tie into the trail. So that trail would afford us the opportunity to get to it, as well as others to use such trails that we have on campus here, like the Arboretum. So we have paved walkways from that location with the exception of a stretch right across the front of the student lot. And then that it gives access to the entirety of campus. So that's just a benefit on our side as we move forward. So the PennDOT engineering team is looking at some things, and they're promising to get back to me here soon. We'll talk with the engineers we've used in the past, Gilmore and Associates, about what we can do on our end. And there'll be some questions that are going to come up in the near future about who's going to take ownership of that crossing. Will it be the township? Will it be the district? Who's going to pay for it? Things of that nature. I know in the past, there was some escrow money set aside for traffic signalization at that intersection, and whether or not that would apply to a project such as this. But we're looking at all those options right now. They're all on the table. Nothing's been ruled out at this point. So that's a promising opportunity for us to make that safer out front. We all know that too many kids are crossing there without any kind of assistance. So if we can make it a safer spot, we're going to try and work in that way. Any questions about that particular project specifically? Okay. We continue to work on camera coverage. Again, we have an outstanding grant ask of about $190,000. We're just waiting for the state to release those funds, but that was part of a program that was promised to us. It was not competitive, so it's just a matter of when the state releases that funding. So we have a number of cameras already online that we are interested in either upgrading or adding additional coverage to. So that'll be a part of those funds as they come along. This month we also refreshed all the traffic markings across main campus here. They're working on utilizing these last few nice days to complete those around some of our buildings. And our respective municipalities have done their share of the work on the outlying areas. Lastly, I just want to touch on the assessment report I brought up last month. So I had a chance to read through it more completely. And here are just a few of the items that were mentioned for us that we can utilize for improvements. One of those was bollards around our buildings. So those are protective areas that would be afforded to points of entry so that a vehicle would not breach the building in any way, shape, or form. Each of our buildings could stand some improvement in that regard. So that was pointed out in this particular assessment from the county. Visible signage, directional signs. We just had parent visitation this week, and it would be very handy because there were a number of questions with changes in the way that the campus is being utilized. Obviously, we need to keep our signage up so people know where they're going. Visibility, that lends itself to an environmental look at, community-oriented buildings as well as the protective factors within them. So some vegetation's been removed around a few of our buildings just to make visibility in and out better, and what we can do with regards to that moving forward. And then also part of the study talked about vehicular access, driveways and roads that might be around our buildings. As I mentioned in the past, the high school here does not have 100% coverage. Middle School East is basically on an island. It has one way in and out. And South Elementary has two very isolated entries that could utilize a loop road around the back to provide for much more safety when it comes to parent pickup and buses arriving and departing. So those were all pointed out in this assessment, and we'll work through those one at a time more than likely and bring them to you as they come up. So if there's not any questions on that slide, I'll go back here. So just to keep you up to date on our staffing, we had 2 open positions, one at South and one at East. We're happy to report we have 2 very good candidates. Their backgrounds are being completed as we speak. We hope to bring them before you at the board meeting for approval in December. One of the candidates can start as early as the following day, December the 10th. The other candidate is a state employee and has to give ample notice to the state for qualifying for discharge and retirement. So we're looking at the week of January 13th to the 21st for that particular employee. But we have no reason to believe that they're going to have any issues with any of the background work going on. And we'll bring those names to you in December at the meeting. Our security officer here at our police officer here at the high school is returning as projected right now on December the 9th from an injury he sustained on duty while involved in an altercation between 2 students trying to calm them down. So we're happy to hear that he's nearly ready to be released by the physician and return to work. We do have one of our school security officers that announced his intention to retire in the first quarter of 2025, and I've been working with HR about what that's going to look like for us moving forward and how we're going to utilize. This is a position that was on the high school budget for a number of years before I came to the district, so we're going to roll that into safety and security. As well, when we get to that point where all 3 of these people are hired and our employees are back, we'll go on to the full staffing that we've been discussing now for some time. Excuse me. Our policy and admin regs we've been working through. Mr. Weaver, Dr. Russell, Mr. Moran, and I have a number of changes as policies come up. One of those I mentioned in the last slide was a training matrix. So there are a few things that we can now shift to an in-house trainer, and we'll include them in the matrix and present that to you as a part of an AR. And I believe that's all I have. Dr. Russell.
Yeah, good timing. Thank you, Chief Miller. So I just wanted to give the committee a brief update on the youth aid panel and the progress we're making at the high school level. Last Saturday, 19 high school staff members attended a youth aid panel training with Assistant District Attorney Angela Bell. So we were both, Dr. Fuller and I, really impressed that there was this level of interest, as was Angela Bell. There were 15 teachers and some other professionals, all of whom are qualified to be a part of a panel, and all 5 administrators attended as well. There is coming before the board in December a recommendation to implement a youth aid panel at the high school beginning with the 2nd semester. To do that, there needs to be some student handbook revisions to this year's handbook. They will also be proposed to the board in December. Dr. Fuller will be there at the board meeting to discuss program planning updates, and in addition to that conversation or presentation to the board, he can touch upon the student handbook revisions. I am sharing that with the board in advance as well. They'll get a brief piece in the memo this week on both topics with red line versions before the board meeting next week. So just an update and looking forward to the possibilities that such an approach will bring to the high school and our students.
Dr. Russell, is this, are we looking at, what, first of the year implementation then?
No, actually it would be for the second semester, so end of January, beginning of February is what they're estimating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anything else for Youth Aid Panel or for Chief Miller? Okay, committee members, anything else to address? I have one more slide. Okay, so many of the topics that we talk about here are, projects, and obviously they have a tail to them, which is the financial piece of things. I'm just announcing to the committee that tomorrow tomorrow morning, Mrs. Hurd and I are actually getting on a phone call with Jamie Doyle to talk about potentially moving forward with these bulleted items here from a project perspective about perhaps additional financing, okay? It's our job in the business office to make sure that as we talk about projects that we deem necessary moving forward for the benefit of our students and our community, that we make sure we have significant funding associated with that. It is just part of the process. So tomorrow we will tell Jamie, hey, if we go out with a new bond issue, what will it look like? We have these projects that we have to slot in there. And then Jamie will produce some documents that we'll be able to chew up and spit out, perhaps at a finance committee of the whole in January. So again, as we wonder where these monies are coming from to pay for some of these projects, outside of the fact that we have grants that we have been proficient at, I think, especially over the past 12 to 15 months, and matching them up with the projects that we've been talking about. And we always use loose numbers so that we don't pigeonhole anything. And of course, the full school board hasn't agreed to any of this stuff as well. They might be aware of it, but we continue to move forward in a process to make sure that when we deem these projects are approved, that we have the proper financing or the understanding of where that financing will come. That's all I wanted to say about that. Okay, any questions about the financing? Because oftentimes we talk about projects and we never really truly talk about where these monies are coming from. When we start talking about some of these larger items, like phases 2 and 3 for the middle school auditorium upgrades, the fire safety alarm panels, the grant will only cover 1.1 million. We do know that we had in excess of 2.5 million. So we've got to cover that equally important safety function at the other buildings that this grant will not cover as well. So those are a couple of items that will immediately come to fruition.
Jim, I don't see it on here, but I'm assuming that there'd be, for the high school, as far as the counseling area, and that is that also a major part of that, I would hope?
Yes, another major component of that is those projects that are falling into the task force type of deeming quality, how we educationally utilize our facilities. Case in point, the counseling centers here, Dr. Russell has mentioned in a number of different areas. We need to make sure that when we go forward with this and we actually ask for funding to maneuver these things, that we make sure that our library is set up for the future, that we make sure that our counselors are set up for the future, so that we creatively address the needs of the district and the buildings into the future as well. So how do we provide education now, and how are we going to do that into the future? So all of those kind of comments, just like the counseling center, is that part of that task force process. Does that answer your question, Mr. Liggett?
Yeah, pretty much it does. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, committee members, anything else to add? Okay, if not, have yourself a great holiday. I'm sure we'll see some of you at a couple of board meetings. And if not, be safe and we'll see you in January. Thank you.